Good morning, class 12 students. This is the second part of the chapter, Deep Water. So, before we proceed with our today's session, let's discuss the portion we covered in the last video. But first, look at a few things about the author, William Douglas. William Douglas, he was born in the year 1898 and died in the year 1980. He was born in USA, United States of America. And Douglas, he was a prominent advocate of individual rights. He also served the Supreme Court of USA and got retired in the year 1975. And the following chapter has been taken from Men and Mountains by William Douglas, of Men and Mountains by William O. Douglas. I think we discussed this in the first video. So also, before we proceed with today's the remaining portion, let's discuss the summary and the portion we covered in the last video again. So as you are aware that Deep Water, the chapter, it actually portrays the journey of William Douglas, that how he was he was able to overcome his fear of water, in other term it is also known as hydrophobia, right? So how did this fear start and how did he develop this fear? So these are the questions that need to be answered. So the fear of water, it started at the age of 4, when he was 4 years old. And his father, he took him to a beach in California. And when they were enjoying the beach and they were surfing, William Douglas, he was very small that time, and he was knocked by a gigantic or a deadly wave, which swept over him, and he almost drowned. But his father, as he was accompanied by his father, he was saved. He was careful, but the child got frightened. He got scared, and this incident, he kind of developed a tiny fear, not hydrophobia, but a tiny fear. So he was very terrified by the incident, and that's how this fear was developed in him. And at the age of 11 years, when he grew up, when he turned 11, the another horrible experience took place, because this time he decided that he would learn to swim. And instead of taking the Yakima River, he decided that he would learn swimming in YMCA swimming pool. The reason is because the river is very treacherous, and so many people had already drowned there. That is why he picked this YMCA swimming pool, because it is very, it provides the opportunity, because at one end it is not very deep, it is like 2 or 3 feet. So William Douglas can easily go, because he is 11 years old, and at one end it is 9 feet deep. So it means at one side he can easily learn and swim, but at the different side, situation is very different, because the water is very deep there. So the child was happy, because now the swimming pool has offered him the opportunity to overcome his fear or to learn swimming. And he got his water wings, and for like 2 or 3 days, he paddled. He tried to copy the other swimmers who were present there. He tried to copy them, and he tried to ape their actions. And one day what happened, he arrived at swimming pool very early and nobody was there. And he waited there and he waited for everyone to arrive. And at this very moment, he came across a bully. He was 18 years old, and he has a very beautiful specimen. He has a beautiful structure. So what happened? Next, so what happened next? The author, he was pushed by the bully in the deep end of the pool, which was 9 feet deep, and because he doesn't know how to swim, so he was frightened of the fact, and you know on his he was, because he was drowning, because he's just a beginner, he's learning he's just learning because he doesn't know how to swim. So now he is drowning, but he's frightened, but he hasn't lost his senses. He has made this strategy that when because he's going down, so he has made this strategy that as long at the very moment his feet he made the strategy that when his feet would touch the bottom of the swimming pool, he would spring, he would make a jump, and he would come to the surface and lie flat like a cork and try to pedal across the edge of the swimming pool. So now it's time for us to continue with the remaining portion. So let's start. So I will highlight the paragraph for you, and then I will translate it for you. And in case if we find any difficult word, I will also highlight it, and I will also tell you the meaning of the difficult word. It seemed a long way down. Those 9 feet were more like 90. And before I touched bottom, my lungs were ready to burst. But when my feet hit bottom, I summoned all my strength and made what I thought was a great spring upwards. I imagined I would bob to the surface like a cork. Instead, I came slowly. So, on his journey, on the way to the bottom of the swimming pool, those 9 feet, now he is emphasizing here because he is actually going through a very difficult, I think, tough time, because he is drowning, and those 9 feet, they actually seem like 90. And his lungs, they were already ready to burst because there is not enough oxygen, they are not right. And he summoned means he gathered all his strength, and he knew his strategy that he was supposed to make a jump the very moment his feet touched the bottom. But what happened, he did not bob means jump, he did not come to the surface like a cork. Instead, I came up slowly, he came up slowly. And when I opened my eyes and saw nothing, so he thought that now he has reached the surface of the water. But when he opened his eyes, he was like he was flabbergasted. He got scared because he was still rising up, right. So all he could see when he opened his eyes, all he could see water that had a dirty yellow tinge. Dirty yellow tinge means when he opened his eyes, the water was not clear. He could actually see this dirty yellow tinge. It means the clarity, he could not see it properly. I grew panicky, and he grew panicky. He started panic because he doesn't know what to do, and he's drowning. He's losing oxygen, he's suffocating. So I reached up as if to grab a rope, so he made unnecessary move with his hands as if he wanted to grab a rope, but there was no rope. He was just making these unnecessary movements, because this is what happens to us, because it happens to somebody who is drowning. Although we don't have anything to save ourselves, but still we make these unnecessary movements with our hands in order to grab something. So that's what the child is trying to do. And my hands clutched only at water, and all he could grasp, all he could hold, clutch means hold, it was water. And it was useless. I was suffocating. I tried to yell, and the child tried to yell. He tried to shout for the help, but no sound came out. But nothing came out. He could not call out for help. Then my eyes and nose came up out of the water, and fortunately, after a long after some time, His eyes and nose came out of the water, but his mouth was still inside. I flailed. I flailed means to wave at the surface of the water, swallowed. So he flailed, he waved, he's outside, and he swallowed because what he swallowed and choked. He swallowed the water of the swimming pool and he was choking. He was choking. He was unable to breathe because he accidentally swallowed water. I tried to bring up my legs up, but they hung as dead weights. So what happened? The child, he tried to pull his legs up. He tried to pull his legs up, but they seemed paralyzed, rigid, dead weight. He could not lift them because he is not a swimmer. He is just a beginner who has just started to learn. A great force was pulling me under, and it seemed that he was being pulled. I screamed, he screamed, but only the water heard him. Only the water heard me. This could be the figure of speech could be here personification, because water do not hear, because water is being personified here. He shout, but nobody heard him, only water. I had started on the long journey back to the bottom of the pool, and now again, having reached the surface, now he's on the second journey. I mean, he's drowning, he's going to the bottom, he's going for the bottom for the second time. I struck at the water. Struck at the water, it means again he's hitting water with his hands. Right? As I went down, and now he's going down, expending my strength as one in a nightmare fights an irresistible force. Sometimes it happens when we are dreaming, right? When we are sleeping. I think it happens with each and every one of us. You must have experienced this once in your life. Even I have experienced. Sometimes when we are sleeping, we have this bad dream, and we see this monster, and we see this force on our chest. It is pushing our chest, and what we do in dreams, we actually use our hands to fight it, this irresistible force. So that's how the child is doing. He's making unnecessary moves, and he had lost all my breath. I had lost all my breath. He is suffocating. My lungs ached. His lungs are paining. My head throbbed. His head is it's throbbing. It's feeling pain. And he was getting dizzy. He was getting dizzy means when you get dizzy, when you feel sometimes when you you feel nauseated, or sometimes it seems that you are more it's kind of a when you are losing, when there is so much carbon dioxide in your brain, that time you are, when there is lack of oxygen, you kind of get dizzy. So that's how this child is getting dizzy. But I remember the strategy, and the child is afraid, but he hasn't forgotten his strategy. What is his strategy? To come to spring up from the bottom of the pool and come like cork to the surface. I would lie flat on the water, strike out with my arms and thrash with my legs. Then I would get to the edge of the pool and be safe. This is his strategy, that the very moment his feet would touch the bottom, he would spring up, he would lie flat on the surface, and he would paddle and try to come across, try to get to the edge of the pool and be safe. So this has been his strategy all along. I went down. This is the second time, right? I went down endlessly. Why does it seem endlessly? Because the situation is very difficult. Each second is very crucial. It is a matter of life and death. I opened my eyes and nothing but water with a yellow glow. Again he opened his eye and he could not see. He could only see the yellow tinge, yellow dirty water. Right? And stalk means severe, and seized means gripped. This terror, this fear gripped him, that knows no understanding. This fear knows no understanding, only terror that knows no control, that no one can understand who has not experienced, and it cannot be understood unless and until you are in the situation. So the child only knows that what he has been going through. I was shrieking, he was shouting underwater. I was paralyzed, and he was paralyzed because he was incapable of making any movement underwater. Stiff, hard, rigid, hard with fear. his body got paralyzed. Even the screams in my throat were frozen, and even now he cannot even shout, he cannot even scream. Only my heart and the pounding in my head said I was still alive. And you know, his heart, the pounding of in his head assured him that he was still alive. He hasn't drowned, he hasn't died yet. And then, in the midst of the terror, came a touch of the reason. I must remember to jump when I hit the bottom, and missed this fear. In the middle of this fear, he knew that he had to make a jump. And at last, I felt the tiles under him. So he felt the tiles hit feet, touched the bottom, and my toes reached out as if to grab them, and he made some movement because his feet, even his feet, were eager to touch the bottom because he was supposed to make a jump. So that his, even his toes, they were actually moving like his hands. So he jumped with everything he had, all the strength he used, but the jump made no difference. But it was useless. The water was still around me. He was still not, he didn't come to the surface. He was still in the middle of water. I looked for ropes, he looked for ropes, ladders, water wings, but he could not find anything. Only water, water. A mass of yellow water heard me, right? Held me, only the water. And the severe terror took even deeper hold on him. It took a toll on him, right? It grew, it grew grave. It is clutching him like a great charge of electricity, right? And I shook and trembled. Trembled means shiver with fright. Frightens fear. He is shivering with fear. My arms wouldn't move. He's paralyzed. My legs wouldn't move. He could not move. He could not. He's incapable of making any movement. I tried to call for help. He wanted to shout, but he was choking. No, nothing came out of his throat. He wanted to call for his mother. Nothing happened. This has happened, when we are in a difficult situation, no matter how old you are, we always say, mother, where are you, help me. So that is what the child is, he is shouting. And then strangely there was a light. I was coming out of the awful yellow water, and the second time he again came out of the water. At least his eyes were out, and my nose was almost out too. So this is the second time he came, he reached the surface of the water. And then I started down the third time, and now he came to the surface, and then again he began the journey third time to the bottom of the swimming pool. And without losing a second, he sucked up for air. He inflated his lungs with oxygen so that it could help him survive the third journey to the bottom of the swimming pool. And the yellowish light was going out. The yellowish light was going out. It means the third time was very difficult. He was completely losing his senses. He was on the verge of death. He was on the verge of death, on the point of death. The all effort ceased means stopped, and I relaxed. Even my legs felt limp means dead. No movement, paralyzed. Blackness swept. It it is to show the death, that nothing, he could see nothing, right? He could not feel anything over his brain was numb. Blackness is numb. It wiped out fear. It removed all the fear, because now his brain is kind of dead. He cannot feel, and he cannot even feel the terror. That's how difficult the situation is. And there was no more panic, because he was dying. It was quite peaceful and nothing to be afraid. This is a nice to be drowsy, and it seems drowsy because when you don't feel anything, when you don't feel any pain, that's how you feel. And then there was no need to, he was going to sleep. There was no need to jump, too tired. It is nice to be carried gently. It means the child is, he's at the doorsteps of death. To float along in space, tender's arm around me, tender's arm like mother's. Now I must go to sleep. So this is what he has experienced, because he is on the point of death, and because of lack of oxygen, his brain it's numb, so that is why he's not feeling anything, and he's he feels his mother's arm, right? And I cross to oblivion. It's it's a forgetfulness. So I think that's all for today's session. We'll do the remaining portion in the last in the third video. That's all for today's session. Please do download your homework and do submit it on yourself. Make sure you don't skip it, and whenever you get it, please do it. In case you have any questions, you know how to approach me. Thank you, everyone.